If you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., don't roll over and go back to sleep. Don't reach for your phone. Don't distract yourself with noise. That's not an accident. That's an appointment. You're not being disturbed. You're being summoned. There's a reason your spirit is restless while the world sleeps, because that's the hour when heaven whispers and earth is quiet enough for you to hear it. That window between 3 and 5 is not just early morning. That's a divine portal. That's where purpose calls and destiny stirs. If you pay attention, you'll find that some of your greatest breakthroughs will begin in those hours. But only if you stop treating it like a problem and start honoring it like an invitation. Instead of complaining about broken sleep, start praying with boldness. I'm not talking about soft, half-awake mumbling. I'm talking about targeted, intentional, fire-illed prayer, the kind of prayer that moves things in the spiritual realm before they ever show up in the physical. That's your moment to speak life over your family, declare favor over your finances, and call peace into the parts of your life that feel chaotic. Don't panic, pray with precision, with power, because the one who woke you up did not wake you up for nothing. Keep a notebook near your bed, because divine downloads don't always repeat themselves. When inspiration hits at 3:37 a.m., that's not just a thought. That might be an instruction. That might be the strategy for your next level. That might be the idea that changes everything. And if you think you'll remember it by morning, you won't. Write it down like it matters, because it does. Don't wait until the sun comes up to start commanding your day. By the time most people are sipping coffee, you've already spoken into existence what's going to happen. You've already made declarations. You've already canceled every attack the enemy had scheduled for you. That's what it means to live intentionally, not reactively. Before the day commands you, you command the day. Ask the questions you're too busy to ask in the noise of the afternoon. Why am I really here? What do I need to become to step into my next season? Where am I settling when I'm called to soar? Don't underestimate the value of stillness. Sometimes clarity only comes in silence, and between 3 and 5 a.m., the silence is thick. That's the hour to seek answers that Google can't give you. And finally, build while it's still dark. Don't wait for everything to be perfect or bright or obvious. Start planning, start writing, start creating. The most powerful blueprints were drawn in dark hours. You don't need applause, you don't need permission, you need discipline and obedience. That's how you turn the early morning call into late morning momentum. So the next time you wake up at 3:12 a.m. or 4:47 a.m., know this: you're not being interrupted, you're being invited. And if you treat that window with the reverence it deserves, you'll realize that those hours are not a burden, they're a blessing. They're not empty, they're everything. That's where transformation begins. Now, what are you going to do the next time you wake up? When you find yourself waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. over and over again, that's not just your body being restless. That's not just poor sleep or a weird habit. That is a spiritual wake-up call. That is divine interference. You are being pulled out of sleep for a reason that is bigger than rest and more important than routine. In those early hours, when the world is quiet and distractions are gone, heaven has your full attention. That's not a coincidence. That's a calling. You see, the spiritual realm doesn't work on your schedule. Purpose doesn't always wait for convenience. Sometimes God needs to interrupt your comfort to deliver your clarity. When you wake up and there's no noise, no phone calls, no emails, no obligations, that's when your soul is most available. That's when the message can finally get through. You might think you're just tossing and turning, but what's really happening is your spirit is becoming alert while your body is still trying to rest. This is not the time to brush it off. This is the time to lean in, because some of the most powerful breakthroughs don't happen in front of people. They happen when no one else is around, in the dark, in the stillness, in that moment when you ask, why am I awake right now? And a whisper answers, because I need to speak with you. You have to recognize that when your sleep is interrupted consistently at the same time, especially in this window, it is not rain, it is a pattern. And patterns in the spirit are often instructions in disguise. So instead of trying to fight it, flow with it. Accept the call. Stop resisting what you're being invited into. This is a divine appointment, not with chaos, not with stress, but with purpose. And those who honor the call in the quiet hours are often the ones who walk in clarity during the loud ones. Because what happens in those moments isn't just spiritual, it's strategic. You're not being disturbed, you're being activated. What's waking you up isn't just your body, it's your assignment. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the natural instinct for many is to worry. Your mind starts racing. Thoughts about money, family, deadlines, mistakes, fears, all flooding in at once. But that's exactly why you're awake. Not to panic, but to pray. This is not a moment for fear to run the show. This is your moment to tap into power, to shift the atmosphere through intentional, focused, faith-filled prayer. Prayer at that hour hits different. It's not about rehearsing problems, it's about releasing them. It's not about begging for rescue, it's about stepping into authority. There's a window of spiritual access during those hours that you don't have at any other time. This is when the noise of the world dies down and your spirit can rise up. If you pray with intent, you're not just talking, you're partnering with divine strategy. You're declaring outcomes. You're aligning heaven's agenda with your reality. Don't pray vague prayers. Don't ask timid questions. Be specific. Be bold. If you need wisdom, ask for wisdom. If you need healing, call it by name. If you're ready for doors to open, speak to the doors. If you want peace, don't just pray for the feeling. Pray to silence the storm. Pray like you know the one you're talking to is listening, is present, and is ready to move. Intentional prayer is not begging, it's building. It's constructing your day, your mindset, your opportunities in advance. When you speak in that space between 3 and 5, you're laying the foundation for how the rest of the day, and sometimes your entire season, will unfold. You're not just reacting to what life throws at you. You are designing your response before the chaos even shows up. This kind of prayer doesn't just bring comfort, it brings clarity. It reminds you who you are, what you're called to do, and what authority you carry. It pulls you out of survival mode and drops you into creation mode. You stop focusing on what's missing and start thanking God in advance for what's manifesting. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being a vessel for purpose. So don't waste those early morning moments worrying about what could go wrong. Use them to declare what will go right. You've got the ear of heaven and the power to shift earth. It's not the time to panic. That's the time to pray with purpose. When you wake up in those early morning hours and begin to pray, reflect, or simply sit in silence, there will come moments when ideas, thoughts, or phrases rise up in your spirit. That's not just your imagination running wild. That's revelation. That's insight. That's instruction. And when it comes, write it down. There's something powerful about capturing what you hear in that sacred space. Those early morning whispers are often answers to prayers you forgot you prayed. They're clarity wrapped in simplicity. But here's the truth. If you don't write them down, you will forget them, not because they're not important, but because life gets loud. The moment the sun rises and the day begins, distractions start competing for your attention. What felt so clear at 4:16 IMing becomes foggy by 9. That's why documentation is spiritual. It's not just note-taking, it's obedience. God doesn't just speak to be heard, he speaks to be remembered. And when you write down what you hear in those moments, that idea, that solution, that name, that phrase, you're honoring the insight. You're saying, this matters. I'm not treating this like a random thought. I'm treating this like a divine download. And often, the things you jot down in the dark become the blueprint for what you build in the light. You might get a name, follow up with that person. You might get a business idea, sketch it out. You might receive a warning, pay attention. These are not casual notes. These are keys to your next level. And sometimes the reason we feel stuck is because we keep asking for more without stewarding what we've already been given. Write it down. You don't need a fancy journal, a notebook, a phone note. Even a voice memo will do. Just capture it. Over time, what you'll realize is that those notes become a track record of God's faithfulness. You'll flip back and say, wow, I wrote this months ago, and now I'm living it. That's how you build confidence. That's how you grow in discernment. You stop guessing and start recognizing the patterns of divine instruction. But it all starts with honoring the moment enough to record it. So the next time you're awake before dawn and something stirs in your spirit, don't dismiss it. Don't assume you'll remember. Grab your pen, your phone, your whatever, and write it down. Because that little note might just be the answer you've been waiting for. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you are standing at the gate of the day before anyone else arrives. It's quiet, it's still, it's open. That's not just a peaceful moment, it's a strategic moment. Because in that space, you have a choice. You can let the day happen to you, or you can speak to it and shape it before it ever begins. That's what it means to command your day before the day commands you. You weren't designed to live on defense. You were created to operate on offense, to go ahead of problems, to set the tone, to carry presence and authority into everything you do. But that only happens when you make a decision early and intentionally about what your day is going to be, not what it might become. If you don't take authority over your day, something else will. Stress will. Distractions will. Doubt will. But if you step in first, everything else has to align with what you've already declared. This is not about hype. This is about alignment. It's about getting your spirit in position before your body even gets moving. It's about speaking life into your relationships, your business, your health, your mind. It's about prophesying over your purpose, even if your situation hasn't caught up yet. You say it first, then you see it. You command peace, not chaos. Clarity, not confusion. Victory, not victimhood. And you don't do it timidly. You do it with authority because you know whose voice you carry. This is how leaders think. This is how visionaries move. They don't wait for the weather, the news, the inbox, or the moods of others to dictate how they show up. They set the temperature. They build the atmosphere. You don't have to be loud, but you do have to be clear. What do you want to experience today? What do you refuse to allow? Speak it. Declare it. Don't just hope for a good day. Command one. Even Jesus, in the scriptures, rose early in the morning while it was still dark to pray and align. That wasn't a ritual. That was strategy. That was warfare. That was preparation. And if he did it, what makes us think we can sleep through it and still walk in power? So tomorrow morning when your eyes open and it's still dark, don't reach for your phone. Don't start scrolling. Don't start reacting. Sit up, open your mouth, and say what kind of day it's going to be. Because if you don't command it, the day will gladly command you, and you weren't built to be pushed around. You were built to live. When you find yourself awake between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you are being gifted a moment, not just to be still, but to go deep. That quiet hour is not just about doing more, it's about thinking differently. It's the perfect time to ask the kind of questions that don't get answered in the rush of the afternoon. These aren't surface-level checklist questions. These are soul-level, destiny-driven, legacy-forming questions. Bigger questions. Questions that break patterns and unlock purpose. Most people spend their whole lives asking small questions. How can I get by? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? But when you're awakened in that sacred space, it's time to flip the script. Ask, what am I really called to build? Who am I becoming? What's the impact I'm supposed to leave behind? Where have I been playing small out of fear when I was called to lead with boldness? That hour between 3 and 5 isn't just quiet, it's clear. And clarity thrives in the presence of courageously asked questions. You have to understand, the quality of your life is often determined by the quality of the questions you're willing to ask yourself. And most of us never slow down long enough to ask the big ones. We're too busy reacting, surviving, grinding. But in that early morning silence, the world isn't talking to you. So your spirit finally has the space to speak through you. That's the moment. Go beyond your goals and start interrogating your purpose. Start asking things like, am I building something that actually matters? Is what I'm chasing aligned with who I really am? What am I doing with the gifts I've been given? These are not easy questions. They're uncomfortable, they stretch you, but that's the whole point. Because you can't rise into your next level of impact with first grade questions. If your vision is grown, your questions have to be too. And here's the truth, God answers bold questions. The universe responds to intentional curiosity. But you have to be bold enough to ask, not just what you want, but why you want it. Not just what's next, but what's necessary. That's how you shift. That's how you grow. That's how you stop chasing success and start walking in significance. So next time you're awake before dawn, don't waste that hour just trying to fall back asleep. Sit in the silence, breathe in the stillness, and dare to ask what most people are too distracted to even consider, because sometimes the answer you're waiting for is on the other side of a bigger, braver question. If you're waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that's not just a wake-up call. That's a construction window. That's the moment where you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start building with what you have. Too many people are waiting for the sun to rise before they take action. But the truth is, greatness is built in the dark, in silence, in solitude, in secret. By the time the world sees the finished product, the foundation was already poured when nobody was looking. You have to understand, just because it's dark doesn't mean nothing's happening. In fact, some of the most powerful moves are made in hidden seasons. That early morning hour is when you strategize, plan, create, and prepare. It's when you sharpen your vision while everyone else is still asleep. You don't need a spotlight to start. You don't need applause to be productive. You need discipline. You need focus. You need a mindset that says, I'm not waiting on motivation. I'm moving in obedience. This is the time to build your business plan, write the chapter, map out the launch, pray over the blueprint. This is the hour to organize the vision that's been heavy on your heart for months. You don't have to have every detail figured out. You just have to be willing to move while it's still unclear. Because faith isn't about waiting for full visibility. Faith is building when all you have is a word. When all you've got is conviction and a quiet room. That's enough. Look at any major transformation in history, any significant shift, and you'll find that the real work started behind the scenes, in the early hours, in the silence, when no one was clapping, when no one believed. That's where leaders are made. That's where entrepreneurs, authors, artists, and visionaries do their best work, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Because when you build in the dark, you emerge in the light with substance. You're not performing, you're producing. Don't despise the dark. Don't wait for things to feel ready. Start moving now. Start building now. You don't need confirmation from people when you've got conviction from God. You don't need validation when you're walking in vision. The dark isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It keeps you focused. It keeps you humble. It keeps you listening. And when the light finally does come, you won't be starting, you'll be ready. So if you're up early, before the world starts spinning, don't waste that time. Build while it's quiet, while it's still, while it's dark. Because what you create in that space will be what carries you in the daylight. So here's what I want you to understand. Waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not a disruption, it's a divine invitation. It's not just your body waking up, it's your purpose calling out. In that stillness, you're being summoned to pray with boldness, to listen with intention, to write down what's whispered to your spirit, and to command your day before it ever begins. You're being asked to rise above routine thinking, to ask the deeper questions, and to build while it's still dark, because that's where legacy is formed. This window isn't for the lazy, it's for the chosen, it's for the hungry, it's for the ones who know that clarity, direction, and momentum don't come when you feel ready, they come when you respond. Every time you wake up in those early hours, you have a choice: go back to sleep and miss the moment, or get up and meet the future that's trying to meet you. You weren't created to just survive your days, you were created to speak into them, shape them, and shift them. And the power to do that often starts when the world is quiet, but heaven is speaking loud and clear. So the next time you find yourself wide awake at 4:12 in the morning, don't ask, why am I up? Ask, what am I here for? And then lean in, because the answer is already waiting. Now, go and don't just live your life, command it.